All right. Good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to see you. Thanks so much for putting aside the time to be here with us as we look at the updated ArtsPay NJ public dashboard. Um, I'm sure if you are here or if you're watching this recording, you're aware of what ArtsPay New Jersey is, but just as a brief gloss, it is a study of compensation, including salary and benefits in the New Jersey arts community and the New Jersey arts sector. And the hope is that this is part of a long-term project to build pay equity and pay transparency within our sector to make us a more flourishing and vital and sustainable field. So this is a project of the arts service organizations throughout New Jersey. So a huge thank you to all of them, as well as the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, which is a major supporter of this program. And the way that this works is every 2 years, hopefully ongoing every 2 years, we will offer two surveys, one for individuals and one for organizations. The individual surveys get analyzed by our partners at Baker Richards, which is the data analytics firm that we have contracted that have been such extraordinary partners in this work. And they put together a report that's been up for a while now on the artspaynj.org website. And you can look at a highlights version, or you can go really deep if you're a data nerd like me and you want to see all the different graphs and charts and everything. There's a lot that you can learn and take away from that. And then the organizational information, and Jonathon will speak more about this in a moment, gets put into a public dashboard that's interactive so that you can slice and dice the data. So we did release a version of that dashboard maybe a month or 6 weeks ago. And it had a lot of great information in it. And then we heard from some folks in the field that there were some use cases they were looking for, some filtering that they were trying to do that they couldn't quite get the dashboard to do what they wanted to get the information out. So we went back to Baker Richards and worked with them to make some updates and adjustments. One of the things that we did was we had to work to find the balance of privacy and anonymity with making sure that there was enough data showing up in specific searches and combinations of filters. So we did a lot of that stuff on the back end. Jonathon, who you're going to hear from, did a bunch of coding that I can't even pretend to understand. And what we've ended up with is a sort of new, improved, refreshed dashboard that hopefully is a little more intuitive to use and will get you to the granularity that folks were looking for. So that's what we're going to primarily look at today. Jonathon's going to share his screen and walk us through the dashboard, the various areas of the dashboard, and then we'll spend some specific time in the salary and compensation tab. And then we'll have some time for questions, and we're a nice small group. So certainly if you have questions throughout, Jonathon, would you prefer people hold questions to the end?
I have no strong preference. I think
Okay.
if there are any burning questions throughout, feel free. I might not stop them, so feel free, Erica, to alert me and invite them to speak. Might just get through the top level tour of the dashboard, and when we get into the meat of it, I'm happy to take questions as and when they pop up. But there'll be time at the end as well.
Perfect. All right. Well, what a great segue. I'm really happy to introduce Jonathon Davies, who is the primary architect of the dashboard, and he'll walk us through now.
Thank you very much. Yeah, very happy to be invited to join you today. As you can probably tell, I'm from the other side of the Atlantic. I understand you have a heat wave. I think it's about 88 with us today. I'm doing some mental arithmetic to convert that into American dollars. So I think a little cooler on this side than it is with you. So I hope you're all getting on okay with that. I'm just going to share my screen. And if in a second you are struggling to see that I've shared my screen, please do indicate that to us. But hopefully, it looks to me, yep, Erica's given me the thumbs up. That means it's all working. So thank you very much for the introduction, Erica. As most of you hopefully are already aware, this is the second instance of the ArtsPay project, and you can find lots of details about the individual survey and some of the organizational findings as well online. This dashboard is from the organization survey. So the data comes from you or your peers. Organizations shared details with us about jobs, freelancers, contractors who work with them and their levels and categories of compensation that they received. And that has all been number crunched and turned into this dashboard that is interactive, and you can go and have a look to understand what kind of ranges of compensation people might expect for different types of work, and also comparing a little bit with the results from the first edition of this project in 2023. So you can see some travel in numbers and compensation over time. If I've been spotlighted and you can see my head turning to one side, I'm looking at my second screen. I am not ignoring you all, so don't worry too much about that. I'll quickly walk through the various pages and reports in the dashboard, and then we'll take a look at compensation as Erica has introduced already. We've done a little bit of recoding of how this data is structured to make sure that it accommodates various use cases, and that there's a couple of ways that you can have a play around and slice this data, and we'll take a look at that shortly. But first of all, this is the homepage. You can get here from the New Jersey Theatre Alliance website. I presume many of you have already had a look already, but I hope we can circulate the link to the splash page about this ArtsPay project, and maybe to the attendees or anyone who wants the recording afterwards. So you can navigate here. The first thing you will see is this homepage. These little circles are all of the different areas you can pop to. It's gone into the chat. I can see the links very helpfully being shared. So yes, you can go to that link and find the dashboard here. I'll just quickly start with the About page. If you just want to know a bit more in detail about this project, it will remind you what this project is, who is participated and who is funded. We're very grateful for that, or who has funded this project. There is some frequently asked questions on this page as well, which may be a bit of a reminder of some of what we'll be talking about today. So some of this is quite procedural stuff. How do I use the filters? If I use a filter on one page, do they carry through to the next? So some reminders there. Some navigational stuff. In the top right-hand corner of all the pages, you'll see a home symbol. So you can always go back to the home page from any report you are on. And if you were really just looking for some top level information and you prefer it narratively, you prefer it to be descriptive text rather than, if you're not a charts person, you're not sort of a pivoting data person, you can get some summary information about the report by clicking on that executive summary report page. What that is it's this nice scrollable report. It puts lots of key data into some simple tables, and it also describes for you what various things mean. You'll see that there are some drop-down menus across the top. Throughout the dashboard, whenever you see a little eye symbol in a circle, it means you can hover over that and it will tell you what that menu is for. So in this case, this green menu that's labeled matched organizations, it means you can look here at the whole sample from 2025. So in this case, we're looking at all of the organizations that responded to the 2025 survey, or you can choose just to look at the organizations, select yes, who actually responded in both editions of the survey. I can see that there is a hand up for a question.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to follow along live, not just watching you do it, but making sure I know how to do it. And I'm on the Theater Alliance website, and I click under industry resources, and it says ArtsPay NJ, but I'm not getting, how do I get to the screens you're on?
So, Mark, if you're at ArtsPay NJ, it says ArtsPay 2025 results are here. If you scroll down, there should be an orange button. It says view the interactive dashboard.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't think
No
to scroll
worries.
down. I just thought it would be one of the buttons I could see. So I'm sorry, which orange button? View the individual?
View the interactive dashboard.
Ah, there we go. Uh, okay, now that looks familiar. Okay,
Awesome.
so I'm sorry to catch up where you are, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Which button are you on? Executive
So
summary.
yeah, it's this second button, which
All
is the
right, I'm
green
with you.
there.
Thank
Great.
you.
No problem. Great. So on this page, you'll see that there are a few menus. Like I said, there's little eye symbols. If you hover over them, it tells you what each of these filters are for. So if you hover over this one, it's about filtering by work area. What we mean by that is what kind of work are we talking about? Are we talking about administrative work or artistic, backstage and technical? This one is about filtering organizations by their budget size. Something you can do in all of these menus is you can either just look at a particular category of budget. If you want to look at maybe two categories, you want to look at the two biggest categories in this list, you can control and click. And when you can control click, you'll see that two of these are selected now. So we're now looking at all of the organizations that fall into those categories. You can select all, and now you're looking at everything. If you want to look at everything except something, you can use that control click technique again. I'm not interested, let's say, in organizations whose total budget is $10 million or above. So I can just control click, having previously selected all. And now I've unselected that tier of budget because I'm actually not interested in this particular example in looking. And that is something that you'll be able to do for most of these. So if I'm interested in, well, what's happening in artistic work, what's happening in backstage and technical, I have control clicked on those two. Or maybe I'm interested in absolutely everything except for education. So I've selected all, I've control clicked, and I've taken education jobs out. What you see now is the total personnel. That's that sort of indigo number. That's the total number of job records that were reported to us by you and your peers in the survey that relates to all of the types of work that are selected. So this is everything except the education jobs because I've just unselected them from my filters. This is the total number of organizations who've responded that actually did share jobs data that relates to those jobs. And this 124 is the total number of organizations who responded to the survey in full. So that's the total number who actually took part in this edition. And those with jobs data is the total number who've got data for the categories that you selected. And if you take a scroll down through this, you've got a little snapshot. It tells you that in the 2025 organization survey, what the median is for those who are on full-time terms of compensation. You've got the interquartile range. So the median is sort of the middle of the data set. We've got lots and lots of rows of data that have been shared in the survey by all of your organizations. The median is the number that sits in the middle of that data set. So for full-time workers, we're seeing the median for the filters I currently have about 64,000. And interquartile range, that IQR, is the sort of the range around the middle. So it's from the bottom quartile to the top quartile. What's the range from people who are sort of 25% of the way up the data set to people who are 75% of the way up the data set? So it's that range around the middle. The middle tells you sort of the median's a particularly sort of data-driven kind of average. The interquartile range tells you sort of not just looking at the middle, what's the range around the middle. So this is sort of more of the indicative range of salaries that are representative of that category. Those on hourly compensation terms for the full-time workers, it then gives you what the per hour rate is for people who are not on a salary but have an hourly driven term. But in general, in the survey, appeared to be working full-time hours on average over the course of a year rather than part-time hours. And then you've got the same summary as well for people who are working part-time on annual salaried basis and on an hourly basis. And then project-based workers, this is quite a broad category. This is what this figure is indicative of is per project, but it isn't controlled by how long those projects are. What's the value of a project? So this is one where you might want to later on when we go to the compensation page, click around some of those categories and levels to be quite granular about what kind of project are we talking about. Are we talking about a freelance performing artist, or are we talking about a consultant? Very different kinds of freelance and non-salaried or hourly work. And then if you keep scrolling down this summary, it really breaks out for you, so you don't have to do it yourself, quite a lot of detail about median compensation. So it gives you the 2023 median, the 2025 median for different terms. You can see on the left of this table, you've got full-time annual, hourly, part-time annual, hourly. It breaks out what the difference between those numbers is. Have they gone up or have they gone down? And there's the final column, which is what's the real difference? And that's taking into account consumer price index between 2023 and 2025. So it's looking at inflation. So for example, in this data set for full-time annual, between the first edition of this report in 2023 and the current edition, it went up the median by 12%. But when we adjust that for inflation, the increase is much smaller. And you can see some of that broken out. So that's for the median. We actually do break that out for the lower quartile. So we're breaking out the detail and how things have changed over time for those median salaries and hourly rates. We're breaking it out for those lower pay as well. And then we do the same again for that higher block of pay. We see, is there any difference between movement over time in median, lower and higher pay? The organizational survey, in addition to compensation, which is most of what we'll be talking about today, it does ask questions about what kinds of benefits are offered, what kind of art forms does your organization service or interact with. So in terms of the benefits that are offered, this table in the interactive executive summary will give you an indication of all the organizations that you've got filtered for here. And I will point at the top that you can, of course, also filter for region. There are a very small number of organizations for whom region is not applicable. Most organizations are headquartered in a region. For all of the organizations who answered the survey, how many of them offer health insurance, paid holidays, sick pay, paid parental leave, dental plans, retirement benefits? You can see in that final column, what's the change between 2023 and 2025? So you can see actually for dental plans, went up by over 5 percentage points. Very pleasing that none of these went down over time. So that's a good sign. Something you might also want to think about is this first green menu. So you can hover over the eye and remind yourself what it is. It's about whether or not you're looking at everyone who responded in 2025, or if you only want to look at organizations who responded in both surveys. So the data sets aren't identical. Not all of the organizations who responded in 23 responded in 25. And there are some organizations who responded for the first time in 2025. So they joined the projects for the first time in this instance. So if the answer to this question, do I want to match the organizations, is yes, you would select, well, actually, yes, I am interested in organizations who responded in both years. You can see that for those who responded in both years, there have probably been some changes in staff composition. You can see that for retirement benefit plans, it looks like those organizations who responded to 23 have increased. More of them are offering retirement benefits to more of their workers. And then in some of these have gone down a bit as well, which might be to do with which kind of contracts have been offered, and maybe certain types of contracts have shifted to freelance rather than salaried. All sorts of reasons why those numbers might change, but you can see that you can choose to filter just by organizations who appear in both data sets, and you'll see then that the numbers are a little bit different as well. And right at the bottom as well, we also are reporting on organizations with union agreements. Organization types, as you'll all be aware, quite complicated. So we have consolidated organization type just into really the two primary categories that you'd sort things into. So there's independent nonprofits and then university or municipally affiliated organizations. So we've sorted various different categories of affiliated organizations, various different categories of nonprofits who are independent. We've put them in those two buckets for ease, and also because we don't want to reveal the specific practices of any specific organizations. There might be some organizations for which they're quite niche and quite specific, and there are only 2 organizations of that type in the whole state. So, and of course, I've got budget organization as well. So budget size and budget change is something that we've also summarized for you in the executive. So the executive summary is where you really come to get at a glance what has happened, what's going on in 2025, what's happened year on year. So this is about budget change. So by organization of different budget sizes, how many of them expect to have a budget change of a certain size, and how many of them have grown or shrunk their budget since the previous years. So you can see for the 35 organizations in our filters with a budget of under 1 million, on average, their budget increased by about 3.3% versus the previous year. Their salary budget on average grew by a little less, and their expected salary change in the next year is quite large. So we can see that some of these organizations, as you'll probably be aware, are under a bit of a budget crunch. We'd love to be a much more commercial sector, other than the fact that it would compromise the art. Some sectors don't have to look at the bottom line as often. But it reveals the kind of challenges that some organizations are facing. Balancing a budget is, as we know, very tricky. So that's the executive summary. It's where you go to find a little bit of detail about everything that the survey covers. And you can look by region, budget size, you can filter by types of work, you can match the organizations, or you can just look at everything and make sure that you're looking at the full results of everything that came out of the wash in the 2025 organization survey. So if I now click on the homepage, I'll just whiz through some of the other sections before we get our teeth into the compensation section. So there's a blue button here called Organizations. If I follow to that report, this is just a little bit more detail. A lot of this is already in the executive summary, but it's just focusing in on some of these questions about the benefits offered by organizations. So again, we've got across the top some filters, some little information buttons that tell you what they are. There's an additional filter here as well, which is you can filter just by organizations who offer certain art forms. Some organizations, of course, offer or present lots of different art forms, whether they're teaching organizations or presenting houses at venues, or a mixture of the two. So this is just filtering by, I only want to look at organizations who in some capacity, whether it's their sole art form or not, present dance. And now in the surveyed on, well, I want to look at the benefits offered. That's what I want to look at first. And we can see that of the 38 organizations who responded to the survey who present dance, you can see more detail than the executive summary. So the executive summary takes out some of those really core benefits and also compares the year-on-year change. This is a longer list of benefits, and it shows you which percentage of organizations you've chosen to look at offer those benefits. So there are new ones like flexible work arrangements, jury duty leave, bereavement leave. So much more detail than in the executive summary page. You can get the sort of the full list here. Similarly, you can also filter by those budget sizes. You can see, well, how does this differ for small organizations? How about the big organizations? You can also look at a few different things as well. So actually, I'm going to unfilter for art forms, because what I'm interested in is of all of the organizations who responded, I'm going to look at the surveyed on menu, select art forms. Okay, well, I can see straight away that of these 124 organizations, more than 3/4 of them present an art education program in some capacity. That's whether or not they're an art education organization or a multidisciplinary organization who have an art education department or program stream. You can see that a little under half of them present music in some capacity. Music and theatre are the top 2 art forms presented outside of education programs. So you can break it down by that. You might also want to have a look at contract worker types. So of all the organizations who responded, you can see that 81% of them engage with performers on contract worker arrangements, teaching artists, technical staff. And you can also get a little bit of information about, volunteer, what kind of compensation a volunteer, is it expenses, and volunteer benefits provided as well. So the 2025 survey, for those of you who spent a while digging through the 23 survey, we added some more stuff in. So there's a little bit more detail available here. So that's the organisation section, and I will quickly just skip over compensation and very briefly pop into this blue calculator icon at the bottom for budget. This is showing you the number of organisations who have a budget change versus the prior year and a salary budget change versus the prior year. So you can see on these graphs, you've got it marked in this black line where we're talking no change in budget. You can see how many organisations are losing budget year on year, how many organisations are gaining budget year on year. Overall, organisations in this survey indicated that generally their budgets have either gone down a little or gone up a little. A handful of organisations, lots of different types of organizations and reasons why budgets might flex year on year, have either increased a lot or have decreased a lot. On the whole, most people's budgets have increased a little bit. The number whose have increased in line with inflation is a little smaller, and you can see that some organizations have had a small decrease in their budget size year on year as well. And fewer organizations have been able to increase their salary budget year on year than they have been able to increase their total budget. In part, that will be to do with also ring-fenced funding and various municipal or affiliation relationships. Just a quick rubric to show you that budgets are complicated, and there are a range of experiences across the sector and the state in how organizations are experiencing year-on-year change at the moment. So you can break that, again, this is available in the executive summary, but it breaks it out in a bit more detail here. And for those of you who want to read the full detailed PDF report as well, which it spends a lot of time with the individual survey, it does have some slides as well from the organizational results and breaks some of that information down. So we've sort of covered in a whistle-stop tour most of the dashboard, but I think where we will want to spend the rest of the session plus questions is looking at compensation and comparing compensation across years. So I just clicked on a button without telling you. I've clicked obviously on the compensation button, which is the sort of the pink indigo button in the bottom left. And this takes us to a page that is very similar, but slightly refreshed to the 2023 version. And there's quite a lot more going on this page, so we'll talk you through it. First of all, we've got a line chart that you'll see is the largest thing on the page. Across the x-axis of this chart, you can see there are some job levels. This is something that we've introduced following user feedback from the initial release of the dashboard, which is how do I quickly, I'm pressed for time, I just want to get some answers out of it. How do I quickly find out what's the range of salaries I should be expecting if I'm going into a salary negotiation for a manager job in marketing, for example, just to pluck it out of the air. Across the bottom, you've got different levels of jobs. So executive leadership, you can see there are manager level jobs, people who don't really fall into a category, so they're professionals, specialists or associate artists or sort of artist related jobs, coordinators, admins, supervisors, assistants. We've also included interns and trainees in here as well, who sometimes may have slightly different compensation treatment, but it's one of the categories of reporting that was shared with us by you and your organizations in the survey data as well. So the responses are being grouped so you can filter by that. And what these numbers are, they're the median compensation for these categories. Now in the top left, you'll see that there's a blue button called filters, and above it, it tells you that we've currently got 2 filters applied. If you want to know what those are, you can actually just hover over and it will tell you that we have a compensation category filter currently applied. We're filtering for annual compensation. And we're filtering on terms of employment, which is part-time, full-time, or project-based. We're filtering for full-time terms of employment. If I click on this menu, so I'll show you here that this is a filter menu. It can be clicked on and opened up. We've got green green menus here, which are to do with jobs. So the things like I want to filter by jobs that belong to a type of work or a job level. So I'm interested in managers, or maybe I'm interested in performance specialists. Job titles, which we'll go on to in a second, terms of employment. You've also got here a clear all filters. So once again, if I go to type of work, for example, you will see that these are these square options once more. So I can just click on something and it selects it. I'm now filtering by administrative work. I actually also want to know about education, so I can control and click. Now I'm looking at both administrative and education. Let's say I'm also wanting to make sure that this is specific to education departments. So I want education work or administrative work that belongs to the education department. So in type of work, either administrative or education. In terms of which department categories that work belongs to, if it's administrative work, I only really want it to belong to the education department. Now I've got those filters applied. If I click on the X, I close that filter menu, see 4 filters are applied. I hover over and it will tell me which filters are currently on there as well. Now, if I open this up, I can clear all those filters. I click on that clear all filters button and it clears them off. You'll spot that compensation category and terms of employment have not been cleared. There's a really good reason for that, and it's because a value always must be selected in these. So in compensation category, you should always have something selected. In terms of employment, you should always have something selected. And that's because if we were to remove the filters from this, you'd be comparing full-time median compensation with part-time median compensation, which wouldn't be a like-for-like comparison. So you should always have full-time or part-time or project-based selected. And the little clue is that these are circles, which means you can't. If you try that control-click trick that I've been showing you for the menus, it won't work. You can only select one of these at a time. It will only allow you to select one of these at a time to make sure that you're not looking at medians that are impossible. If you're looking at all of it, you might think, well, you can't have a median salary of 12K because that would be illegal. But that's because you're putting in part-time work, and that would be a perfectly reasonable part-time compensation. These blue menus are about filtering by organization. So these green menus are all about the type of job. These blue menus are all about organization filters. So if you only want to look at organizations who present certain art forms or organizations of a certain budget size, or actually I'm mostly interested in independent nonprofits, or maybe I'm interested in university municipally affiliated organizations, or only really looking at north of the state. So I can pick a region from these menus as well. So they are all available there. Now that filter menu had an item called job title. On the right-hand side of the screen, you will see that there is a table of job titles. So at the moment, I'm really just looking at all full-time work on annual compensation terms rather than hourly. It's telling me that, as we saw on the executive summary page, the median salary is overall 64. I've broken that out by job level across the bottom. It tells me what the range is around that median. So the median is 64, but we're really looking at ranges for full-time annual of from 50 to 90. And this is the number of personnel in the data set we're talking about who reported that number. But we've got some job titles here as well. These job titles will not be exhaustive. Over 3,000 distinct job titles were reported to us in the survey. So what we've done is we've combined similar jobs that are very close, or maybe they're synonyms for each other, or they're reworded versions of the same job title. We've merged them into the same job title, and we've merged similar or adjacent jobs. Some jobs are too specific to be merged, and they've been left as they are. Now, what you can do in this table is, well, I can click on an item, and I've clicked on Executive Director / CEO. What you can see straight away is that the numbers across the top have changed. So it's now showing me what the median is for the job title that I've selected. I can do that for another job. So I instead want to click on Curator, and I'm now seeing the figures across the top for the job title that I've clicked on. As a health warning, I'm just going to pick something that I think is probably more unusual in the sector or quite specific. A director of IT. Not all organizations have such a senior role in information technology. Some of them may just have manager level. What you see is that these boxes across the top that give you the key stats aren't giving you the figures. And when you see this, it's because probably only a couple of personnel in the survey belong to this category. So we can't really surface the outcomes because it might be that you've gone looking for a job title. Maybe you know that there are two people who have that job and you know who they are. And we probably shouldn't be telling you what their compensation is. So when you see insufficient sample size start to populate these boxes when you've gone as deep as a particular job title, it's because we don't have enough data about that particular job to show you the median for that job on its own. What we can do is we can include that job in a larger bucket. So the compensation details provided for the couple of people who fall into this category, Director of Information Technology, on a full-time basis in this instance, they'll be included in the Director and Senior Leadership category. So their compensation's included in that data set. But what we're not doing is surfacing the really detailed information about what is probably the compensation of just a couple of people. Whereas a lot of organizations have an executive director and a marketing manager, and you can find that information by clicking on artistic director, and you can find out the detail there, because we're talking about a job that's more common. They're not always called artistic director, by the way, but we've concatenated it into the category because we all know what it means. So you can actually, in addition to scrolling through this table and selecting it, this menu job title in the filter menu, it's the same data. And the trick you can do with the job titles menu here is you'll see there's a little search box which you can use. If I start typing out the word manager, it will bring up in this jobs list lots of jobs that belong to the category manager. So I don't even need to type the whole job out. I can begin typing the word manager and it will bring them up. If I start typing out the word assistant, it will start bringing out assistants. If I start typing in the word director, it will bring the word director. So as I say, not all of these jobs will reveal data to you because sometimes they're too niche. I think we also will continue to review if any of these job titles can be grouped together to create as many clickable items as possible, but there will always be some anonymity gates in this data to make sure that nothing inadvertent is being revealed through this dashboard. And then this chart that shows you, the medians by different levels, that's job level. And job level is, of course, also something that is available in this filter menu. So in addition to seeing it broken out into that chart on the page, you'll see that those different job levels are also available in this menu. So a couple of things that you might be doing when you're looking at this page, you might be thinking about, well, we're going to advertise a new job that is, we've never had this job. We haven't got the last person who was in post salary to use as a benchmark for what this is a new job for our organization. I've asked some of our peers what kind of level it should be posted at, but maybe I want to know what the ranges are to make sure that we're offering fair compensation and that we're competitive in the market and the right people that we're looking for will be looking. Maybe you're looking for a job and you want to sort of sense check what the salary levels are because you're not sure, because how can you be until you've had the job? So you might be coming in with a job in mind. The two things you might want to do are to type in related words or job titles to see if you can find something comparable, or you might just want to pick the level that job's at. Lots of job titles in the real world are quite niche and specific, sometimes a little bit funnily worded, if we're being honest. So a way that you might want to approach this is looking for the job level that you think you're operating at, selecting that. And then you've also got the ability to look by different departments or even at a higher level, just categories of work. So if you're looking for administrative work, and really what you're thinking about here is what is the range of compensation for people who are a manager or a senior leadership level? You've filtered immediately for this. You've got some of the job titles as well that belong to these categories. Some of these you'll be able to click on and get detail. Some of them you won't, but you can certainly get a sense of which jobs belong to the categories you filtered for to make sure you're in the right place. But you're looking for administrative work. I've chosen administrative as my work area. And I'm just looking at these sort of two middle management and senior management levels. So I've selected them and I can see that overall the median here for full-time annual work, we're looking at 72. But actually in this graph, it splits out, well, this is what it would be for those senior leaders, and this is what it is for the manager level as well. So it breaks that out for you. Alternatively, I might be looking at education instead. And I'm not so much interested in people who head up those departments. I'm more interested in the kind of people who belong to, maybe they work with youth theatres or sort of summer groups as a manager of youth productions. Maybe they are a teaching artist. What kind of offering is available? Actually, full-time annual, this is quite a limited category. So I might want to switch here and instead look at project-based. And not so interested in annual actually for the project base. Maybe I want to look at it per project. And I know that if I'm looking at a project, they're not the highest rolling projects going under this. I will say for the project based, it wasn't possible in the survey to collect lots of detail about how long these projects last. Some contractor relationships do have rough or predicted annual expectations. So we do have some ability to look instead of annual or hourly in here as well. But yes, you can split out these different terms of employment. You will spot if I click on part-time and full-time, all of a sudden the data disappears for per project because you don't get compensation on a per project basis if you're working part-time or full-time. Clear all those filters just to see. There we go. And now we're looking at the median part-time compensation as well. We can see, as you might expect, there is a difference in median salary, and that difference will also be in part to do with how often people work. Now, I know there's a lot of information there. There will be time for questions in just 2 minutes. I'm just going to click on the home page and navigate to the final report section that we haven't talked about, which is called Compare Years. So this is one other place where you can do some comparison of compensation. You can see again, there is a filter menu. It tells you we've got a couple of filters applied. So once again, open that up. You can see I'm looking at full-time and annual compensation. A couple of new filters. You recognize matched organizations from the executive summary. If you're comparing compensation, you can compare the whole 2025 data set with the whole 2023, or you can just look at organizations who appear in both years. And there's another one in red called inflation adjusted. Inflation adjusted means we're using the consumer price index to adjust 2023 numbers into 2025 terms. So we're comparing it in real terms. And nominal just means, well, I know that inflation happened. I just want to see what the total change overall is. So you can see that comparing those full-time workers' annual compensation terms between the 2 years, you can see what the change in median at that lower percentile, that sort of 25th percentile, at the higher level as well. So what's the change in median? What's the change in lower pay? What's the change in higher pay over time? And you can split that out. And unlike the executive summary, we've brought in some of those job levels here. So if we're just looking at executive leadership, we can see that actually executive leadership was quite static in terms of job movement. People haven't been pushing the leaders or the CEO's salary right up. It's pretty much where it was. It stayed pretty level. If we want to look at director or senior leadership level, you'll see we are adjusting for inflation. You'll see at the top, just below that filter menu, there's a little sentence that tells you if the inflation adjustment is currently active. So if 2023 values are being expressed as if they're $2025, you can see that it's gone up a little bit, actually, slightly ahead of inflation, but still ballpark the same kind of area. So this is just a slightly more detailed page where you can, in further detail than the executive summary page allows, compare those year-on-year changes using the same filters available to you in the compensation page. And just to say as well, you can also compare some of the survey responses year on year. So in this instance, we're looking at benefits offered, and you can compare the bereavement leave between 23 and 25. You can see in this table, it shows you what the upwards or downwards change between the 2 years is. So again, it's a bit more detailed than the executive summary page, but it's the same comparison, but no longer a summary. I think we've got about 10 minutes, so I wonder if that's a good place to pause. I think we've covered what's changed, which we've added a bit more detail in those job titles, and really crucially, we've added the job levels is the biggest new addition to the dashboards to allow you to look at the kind of work that you're hunting for if you can't find the exact job title. And for those of you who haven't yet looked at the dashboard before, I think we've probably covered all the report pages, but there's quite a lot going on.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jonathon. We do have about 8 minutes for questions if anybody has anything more they want to hear about.
I'll just say it was very thorough, your explanation, and thank you, Jonathon, not only for compiling it all, but then walking those of us here today through this, and hopefully others who maybe registered and will watch it later. I have to do that way too often, just because I want the info, but the timing doesn't work. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question. Hi, my name is Eva Dooley, and I represent the Wharton Institute for the Performing Arts. Thank you for this, because I can see we had talked to Erica about having some difficulty finding some of the positions we were trying to compare, and this has definitely improved significantly. I'm playing with the dashboard as you're going along, and I see like that there's a lot of positions. For example, I'm the financial director, right? So I'm looking at the finance positions, and they all say insufficient information. So I'm assuming there just wasn't enough data for some positions, because I'm filtering, I have a number of filters. I'm filtering on a nonprofit for organization type, budget 1 to 5 million, art forms all, compensation category annual, terms of employment full-time, and then I left everything at all so I could click on the job titles on the right. And as I go through, I'm not seeing, if I were to click on the financial positions, like Director of Finance and Administration, I just get insufficient data. Wait a minute, Director. Yes.
Yes. So definitely that will be the case, that there aren't enough job rows of data. So there aren't enough personnel who belong to that job title for us to be able to surface that. What we certainly can do, or what I could certainly do as well, is that list of job titles, as I said, it has been put together by us. We did a similar exercise in 2023 because the sheer number of unique job titles submitted by organisations in the survey is quite astonishing. The number of different ways you can. Sorry, this is a phrase that maybe isn't used in America, but different ways to skin a cat is a Scottish phrase.
We use that, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Because some people find that bizarre. I work across different territories, and in some territories that's a strange one. So it's certainly the case that we can do some additional refining of those job titles. Now, what I will do when I look at that in the back end is sometimes I might see some job titles and I think, well, that can all maybe be summarized as Director of Finance, and then I actually look. Yeah. Then I look at the compensation. I think, oh, actually, they're not the same job. Sometimes jobs that sound the same maybe actually are at different levels of seniority, for example, and then it becomes apparent that they are quite niche jobs. But absolutely, I think it would be not to suggest unilaterally that people send Erica and John additional emails, but there's still a little bit of room and a bit of time, I think, for us to finish finessing that list of job titles. I think there's about 120 unique job titles, that some of which are trying to express and summarize quite a large number of really quite unique and wacky jobs. Right. So it sounds like that might be one I can take another look at, and I'll let Erica know if it was possible to improve it, or actually, if there are just lots of really unique jobs hiding in this category, and unfortunately, it's one where you might have to look at the job level and think, well, I know that it's at this job level, it works across these departments, and this is roughly the range that belongs to that job level, sort of director and senior leader working in these departments. If I can't find the exact job title, then this is the kind of ballpark that we're looking at.
Okay, and I am finding much more than we found last time, so the improvements were great. This will really help us. I think maybe just for those few positions, I might just, maybe Eric, I can send you an email on the ones that were, these are the ones that we're not really finding. And this is the general, level of the position and the function, and maybe you'll be able to marry it to one of the other titles,
Yeah.
since we could all be calling it something different. So
Yes,
that would be really
yeah, I
helpful.
appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Jonathan, would it also tell me if this is not a sound strategy, but if we're filtering all the way to just that 1 to 5 million range and we're getting insufficient data, if we added the under 1 million and the 5 to 10 million, am I right that the anonymized data in the 1 to 5 would then get looped in? So you would sort of see a wider range of budget ranges, but the median might sort of align because you're actually looking for the middle category.
I think that's probably how it would fall. I can't always guarantee that that's exactly, but it's probably the case that if you are interested in a budget range that's in the middle of just 3 selections, if we assume, and I think it is an assumption, that there's a linear relationship between budget size and compensation size, it would mathematically be the case that if that linear relationship is true, the median would be the budget category. So if you select the one below and the one above, but it isn't always the case that there is a linear relationship between budget size and compensation size, because there can be small organizations that only have a handful of people, but actually the compensation for those people is proportionally a higher percentage of that smaller budget. So I wouldn't say you can always assume that if you're looking for something that's not got enough data in a particular budget category, that you can just add adjacent categories and assume the median will relate to your budget size, because I think it certainly is the case that there are some jobs that will be paid the same or higher in lower budget categories, and you wouldn't necessarily expect that, but you can't see that happening. So it's a very clever idea, but I'm not sure it will always work out exactly that way in reality. Though I also don't think there's a dramatic difference between the median compensation between some other budget tiers anyway. So if you're not always sure if you can find enough, some of the budget tiers are also smaller than others, so you're more likely to run into that data issue for the anonymity filter, because some organizations are more likely to be, some of them have quite a lot of the survey in them, and some of them have a small sample of the survey. I don't think the differences are so big that you can't also look at adjacent categories and find it to be relevant to your use case.
Great. All right, we are at 11:59. Any last burning questions while we've got Jonathon's expertise with us? All right. Well, thank you so much for all of your work with these updates, Jonathon, and for taking the time today to walk us through them with such patience and clarity. And thank you to you, Eva, and to Erica, another Erica, who reached out and sort of got this conversation started, because I think it's really, it's very commendable that you got in there. We're playing around. We're feeling like we're not quite understanding this, and didn't just give up or assume it was you. So we really appreciate you reaching out. I think it's going to make a big difference for everybody that's using the dashboard, and it gives us good ways to carry it forward also the next time we deploy the survey. So big thank you. A thank you again to all of the art service organizations that come together to do this work. And of course, to the New Jersey State Council on the Arts for their incredible support and encouragement of this project.
Yes, and I just want to thank, this is John McEwen, thank Erica so much for your time and care in this. And Jonathon, thank you. And all your colleagues at Baker Richards. And as you go through the dashboard, all of you on today's webinar, as well as those listening, if you do have questions, we have all unique situations, right? At our organizations. So please don't ever hesitate to reach out to Erica or myself if you just want to walk through something where the dashboard is, you might have some questions as you're going through it. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We also have we're going to be doing some webinars based upon the learnings from the survey. And our first one is going to be on June 4th. You should have seen that announcement when you got the announcement for today's webinar, all about teaching artists and working with organizations and making sure that contracts and an understanding of that relationship and policies between artists and organizations are clear. So we're hoping that you can register and share us for that discussion. Of course, all webinars will always be recorded, but it's always great to be in community with each other if we can during the webinar. And I didn't know if, Erica, if you had anything to add about June 4th.
Yes, thank you so much for that reminder. I just dropped the registration link in the chat. All of the sort of educational webinars that come out of the ArtsPay data are inspired by things that we notice, the stories that the data is telling. So for instance, we were really surprised to see such a high percentage of teaching artists who reported working without any kind of written agreement, a contract, a letter of agreement, anything like that. And so we thought, let's put together some educational opportunities around best practices in contracting. And so we'll have folks from large organizations, folks from small organizations. We have a teaching artist to speak from her experience. So we really hope that you'll attend that. And then we'll be working on a series of other opportunities starting in the fall. And in the meantime, if you just can't get enough ArtsPay content, which I can't personally, I'm also going to drop the link in the chat for, except I grabbed the wrong thing. All of the last round of educational webinars were recorded and archived and are on the ArtsPay website. And that includes things about employee classification, making sure that the right people are eligible for overtime or not. There's one about retirement benefits and several different very easy ways that you can start offering retirement benefits. And then there's also one about internships and ethical models for hosting interns and apprentices. So those are evergreen and they're up on the website. So if you can't wait, if you come to June 4th and then you can't wait till the fall, it's great to kind of check those out. So I will drop those in the chat as well. Mark, I see your hand.
Just a quick question. Same church, but different pew. You're talking about recording things and such and being able to watch later. Is the awards event next week ever recorded for those of us who can't attend?
The morning session, this is the Cultural Access
Right.
Summit, which is, for those that don't know, which is on the 28th at Grounds for Sculpture that we do each year. The morning education panel will be live streamed. The awards program, though, it's very difficult to set that up because it's probably half of it is people just sitting and having some lunch. So, but the morning education session will be live streamed. Yes. And I can have Lauren or Kat in our office make sure, Mark, that you get that link. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Terrific. Thank you so much. This also will go up in that same educational archive, and we will also send an email with this that you can revisit or share with your colleagues or all of the above. Thank you again so much. Thank you, Jonathan. And
thank you.
Thanks, everybody.